so, you know, we've all kind of practically took care of what some of clothing means on a day like today. There's a very, very practical reason for it. Well, once upon a time, there was a guru from, Eastern spirituality who was meditating. And he was meditating from the site of the bank of a river. And I don't know if this was the usual thing this guru did, but the sight of doing it with the flow of water sort of, emulates the flow of life. The flow of life from God that was rinsing through the person of the guru. And, what he was, really trying to do was to get into the deepest touch with God and with himself. Kind of sitting alongside of himself, getting in touch with the deepest part of who he is. Well, it turns out that the point at which he was there at the river, a tree had felled, and it was catching what was floating down the river, the debris. And it happened that in the lapping on the log, a scorpion got caught in the churning of the water. And, clearly the scorpion was flooded, literally, in its ability to get out of the churning of the water, and was most assuredly going to perish there. And now the guru, now sort of deeply in touch with who he is, without thinking, found himself getting up and going over to that tree and getting on it and finding himself, without thinking, out there, and then going down to help this poor creature. And zing! Of course he was stung by the scorpion. But he went down again, stung again, and a third time. An observer walking on the bank of the river was looking out, and he's saying, God, does not that man understand that he will be harmed greatly if he die himself? So he spoke out loudly. He said, man, come off that log before you drown yourself. Do you not know that every time you reach down to rescue that creature, you will be stung? The man sat up on the log and he repeated back, just because it's the nature of a scorpion to sting, don't deprive me of my nature. Just because it's the nature of a scorpion to sting, don't deprive me of my nature. Is that why in the Old Testament we would have names for God like Hesed, another name for God like Rachamim, which are translated, literally as the one who does mercy? That God's name is mercy. And could it be that, born through the Creator, that we have inherited this DNA, that it's been written on our hearts, right? That mercy is a part of the deepest part of who we are, because we inherit it from God the Creator, who birthed it in us. And so, then would it not make sense that don't deprive me of my nature, which is to be merciful to this creature, and compassionate to this creature, to be moved to go out there, with the creature, right? And could it be also that we're sort of at the root of the corporal works of mercy here when we're looking at this? That the corporal works of mercy would have been reflected on and talked about, through the stories of the scripture. And if we would come upon a Lent, would we find that Lent would roll out with this very, very core kind of thing, right? So we have Ash Wednesday, and then we come on the Friday after Ash Wednesday, and we have stuff like this being read and reflected on. This, rather, is the fasting that I wish. Releasing those bound unjustly, untying the thongs of the yoke, setting free the oppressed, breaking every yoke, sharing your bread with the hungry, sheltering the oppressed and the homeless, clothing the naked when you see them, and not turning your back on their own. Isaiah 58. There's an Ezekiel reading from the Old Testament, very similar. And then the birth of the corporal works of mercy. We go through the first Sunday of Lent, and we land on Monday, February 18th. The gospel is Matthew chapter 25. Are you folks on the right or the left? You picked the right. And I was suggesting that Jesus was, putting on his right,
the right side,
those who performed the, corporal works of mercy, did it for Jesus. But that's what Matthew 25 is the corporal works of mercy. And so we're here reflecting on the corporal works of mercy in Lent. And this is the fast. It is mercy inside. You know what I'm saying? And that's it. And that's who we are in our depth. And so, clothing the naked. There's an obvious, very practical need for someone who doesn't have clothing, right? Against the elements and all that. But there also is a very, I think, personal something going on in clothing the naked. Taken from just the way we are with clothing. Clothing is an extension, I believe, of our person, of ourself. It's a kind of an outer something of the inner something, the spirit. And I'm expressing myself, I certainly am in this outfit. But, more than that, all of us, I think, find ourselves being kind of careful with what we wear because it somehow bespeaks something about who I am. And I think, especially we find this to be true when we would be giving a gift of clothing to another person. We'd have to think about their size, and we'd have to think about something they would like. And we would have to think about what would look good on them. And it would be then, in my mind, a kind of a going over into the world of another, and then coming back with what I know from the other in order to understand this as a true sensitive gift. See.